Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. It started with the whistles. I was in the lineup behind Sector 12, standing just off the main avenue, adjusting the feathered wings strapped to my back, when I heard them. Sharp, shrill, cutting through the bass of the drums. The kind of sound that makes dancers freeze, look around. I thought maybe it was just a security warning. Someone drunk. A scuffle maybe. We had practiced for months for this parade. Costumes glittered under the stadium lights, sequins blinding under the heat. Giant floats waited like sleeping monsters down the line, each one ready to roll forward on cue. I remember the smell of sweat, the cheap spray glue, the sugar syrup from the street vendors hanging thick in the air. The crowd in the stands buzzed, shouting, clapping, waiting. From where I stood, their faces were just a blur of bright shirts and flags waving back and forth. Some even leaned over the railings, laughing, tossing streamers. We were supposed to make the first big turn in 5 minutes. The whistles came again. More of them. And not just from the security guards now. Random bursts, no rhythm to them. Short, frantic. I glanced at Marcia, who was fastening the beadwork on her bodice. She gave a shrug, like it was nothing. We had seen worse during rehearsals. Streakers, fainting kids, even a small fire once. Then someone came running. Not walking fast, running. A vendor, carrying a half-crushed tray of bottled water, elbowed through the dancers ahead of us. His apron was ripped, one shoe missing. His face was wet, and not just from sweat. His mouth moved, but whatever he shouted was lost under the pounding of the drums. Behind him, a woman in a silver headdress tripped and slammed into the side of a float. Others started shouting. Some turned back toward the entry tunnel. A ripple of motion spread through the lineups like a wave hitting a reef. We were trained not to panic. Show must go on, no matter what. That's what they drilled into us. But when I saw the first body hit the pavement, a teenage girl in a pink uniform, stumbling with blood pouring from her shoulder, I dropped the samba pose without thinking. Then the screaming started, the kind that cuts deeper than any music. At first it was chaos without shape. People shoving, spinning around, dropping costume pieces and gear bags. A few of the security guards ran in with batons raised, but they hesitated when they reached the bodies. I didn't wait for an announcement. I grabbed Marcia's arm, yanked her toward the floats. Metal railings along the avenue were supposed to keep the crowds back, but now they were cages. Some people tried to climb over. Others got stuck between them. Easy targets for whatever was moving fast through the dancers now. It wasn't clear yet. I thought maybe it was a riot. Maybe knives. Maybe some kind of chemical attack. Anything but what it really was. Marcia ripped off her headdress, blinking in the bright floodlights. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice tight. I didn't know. All I knew was we needed off the avenue. One of the float drivers was still in his cab, revving the engine. A massive figure of a jaguar loomed on top of the vehicle, mouth wide open in a permanent snarl. I made for it, shoving through a tangle of glittered capes and half-crushed feather fans. Someone grabbed at my costume wings, but I tore free, hearing stitches rip. Marcia was fast. She kept up even in her heels. We reached the float just as the first infected dancer slammed into the side. He wore the green and yellow colors of our section, but his face was all wrong. Eyes too wide, teeth snapping at nothing, blood dripping down his chest. He clawed at the side mirror like an animal. The driver inside hesitated too long. Another one, barefoot, dress shredded, hauled herself up onto the hood. They moved faster than anyone drunk or injured should have. Inside the cab, the driver finally panicked and threw the float into gear. The Jaguar roared forward, crushing abandoned costume carts in its path. It bought us a few seconds. "Warehouse!" I shouted, pointing past the last lineup sector where the storage buildings loomed, half hidden by the light haze of smoke machines. Marcia nodded once, and we ran. The service gates were open just a crack. Someone must have tried to flee and jammed them, We squeezed through, scraping sequins and feathers off against the concrete. Inside, the noise changed. The bass and drums still pounded outside, but in the warehouse district it was quieter, hollower. The sound of footsteps, distant shouts, the clatter of something metal hitting the floor. We passed stacked floats not yet deployed, huge shapes covered with tarps. Costumes on hangers swung lightly in the breeze from busted industrial fans. It smelled like diesel, hot plastic, old sweat. Marcia grabbed my sleeve. "Wait," she hissed. Ahead, past a row of supply crates, a small group crouched against the wall, security uniforms, nightsticks in hand. They were arguing in low, frantic voices. One of them, a younger guy with blood staining his pant leg, kept looking back toward the main avenue. "They're coming this way," he said. "We can't hold them." A woman in a white security jacket shook her head sharply. "We stay. Orders were to contain the breach until evacuation. We can't open the north gates, not yet." Another said something about backup, about radio calls not getting through, static, someone jamming signals, or something worse. We stayed low, moving sideways through the maze of crates. The security team didn't see us. They were too focused on the widening shadows creeping into the loading yard. The infected were pouring in. Some stumbled, arms loose and jerking. Others sprinted, limbs snapping unnaturally fast. A few let out high, warbling shrieks that echoed off the concrete walls, setting the trapped pigeons fluttering from the rafters. The guards didn't stand a chance. We found a service stairwell leading up to the catwalks above the storage bays. Rusty metal steps groaned under our weight. Marcia cursed softly when her heel caught on the grating. She kicked her shoes off and climbed barefoot. From above, we had a better view. It was a flood. The infected moved like a tide, surging into every open space. Some fought over scraps, half-torn costumes, food trays, even dropped cell phones. Others moved with horrifying purpose, eyes locked onto anything still breathing. The guards below fought, but it was hopeless. Nightsticks cracked against skulls to little effect. Guns barked once or twice, but soon there was just screaming. I pulled Marcia deeper into the catwalks, toward a utility door marked with faded paint. Maintenance, roof access. If we could get up top, maybe we could find a way across the warehouse roofs, maybe even to the back lots where the emergency vehicles were staged. We didn't talk much. Words felt too loud. The infected didn't tire. That was obvious now. Some should have been down, head injuries, broken limbs, but they kept moving, twitching, snarling. I saw one with half his calf torn away, still chasing after a stumbling girl in a golden mask. The maintenance door wasn't locked. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. Doors left open tonight only meant one thing. Someone else had already fled this way, and either made it or didn't. I pushed the door open slowly, Marcia gripping my arm for balance. Beyond, a narrow corridor lined with electrical conduits stretched upward toward a final steel door marked roof. And somewhere behind us, a new sound rose, a chorus of shrieks, urgent and bone-thin. They had seen us. The stairwell stank of burnt plastic and old sweat. We climbed 2 steps at a time, our hands scraping along the corroded railings for balance. The infected behind us didn't hesitate. They hit the stairs at full speed, snarling, slamming into walls, scraping their palms raw on the metal. I could hear Marcia's breathing, quick and sharp behind me. Not panicked, controlled, focused. She'd danced 8-hour rehearsals in worse heat than this. She knew how to push through. We burst through the steel door onto the rooftop, slamming it behind us. I jammed a loose pipe through the handle brackets, not trusting it to hold but hoping it would buy us a few seconds. The roof stretched wide and uneven under the stadium floodlights. Aluminum vents and air conditioning units cast long shadows over the gravel-strewn surface. Beyond the warehouse district, the bright river of the Sambadrome Avenue glittered under stadium lights. Even from here, I could see the floats still crawling forward, oblivious to the chaos spreading behind them. Music still pounded from the loudspeakers, drums, brass, singers shouting lyrics of joy and celebration into a night that was anything but. Marcia pointed. On the far side of the roof, a maintenance scaffold leaned against the building's edge. Past that, across a narrow alley, another warehouse roof stretched flat and low. If we could cross the gap, we might get away from the stadium grounds entirely. I nodded. We sprinted. Halfway across, I heard the door behind us buckle with a shriek of metal. The infected had reached the roof. They spilled out like broken dolls, some running, others dragging themselves forward with twisted limbs. A few spotted us immediately. Their mouths opened wide in silent howls, and they gave chase without hesitation. The scaffold wasn't made for escape. It swayed under our weight, metal bars rattling with every step. Marcia went first, nimble and fast despite bare feet bloodied from the rough gravel. I followed, the whole structure creaking under us. The jump to the next roof wasn't far, maybe a meter at most, but it felt like crossing a canyon. Marcia went airborne first. She landed hard, rolled, came up limping but alive. I didn't look back. I just jumped. My shoes scraped the ledge, and for one awful second I thought I might slide backward. But Marcia grabbed my arm and hauled me over. The scaffold behind us shuddered as the first infected reached it. The whole thing bowed outward, groaning under their weight. One sprinted up the frame like a spider, shrieking in triumph. Then the scaffold collapsed. Steel pipes snapped, crossbars bent, bodies tumbled into the alley below in a rain of broken limbs and shrieking fury. We didn't stop to watch. We ran. This warehouse was older, less maintained. Rusted patches pocked the rooftop, and puddles of stagnant water glinted under the stadium's dying light. The night was changing. The wind had shifted, carrying the acrid stench of burning fuel. Somewhere close, fires had started. Maybe food stalls, maybe generators overloaded. The smoke mixed with the sharp, coppery stink of blood and something else, something sour and rancid, like rotten meat left too long in the sun. Marcia pointed again, this time to a line of ventilation ducts leading toward a lower maintenance annex. If we could climb down the side, maybe reach street level, we might slip away into the city. I kept looking back over my shoulder. Some of the infected survived the scaffold collapse. Others circled the edge of the first roof, snarling, pacing like wolves. They hadn't figured out the jump yet, but it was only a matter of time. We hurried along the ducts, slipping, sliding, using every handhold we could find. Down below, the streets weren't any safer. Flames lit up Avenida Presidente Vargas in patches, where overturned food carts and barricades burned unchecked. Shadows darted between wrecked cars and smashed shop fronts. It wasn't just infected now. Looters too. Desperate people with stolen TVs, sacks of food, armfuls of shoes they'd never have a chance to wear. Sirens wailed in the distance, too far away to matter. Gunfire popped sporadically from the direction of the police headquarters. No order, no control, only noise and fire and fear. We found a metal maintenance ladder bolted to the annex wall. It looked ancient, rust bleeding down the concrete. Marcia tested the first rung carefully. It held. One at a time, we climbed down. Halfway to the ground, a spotlight flared to life across the avenue. A military truck. Camouflaged, battered, mounted with loudspeakers. A voice boomed over the speakers in rapid Portuguese. All civilians are ordered to shelter in place. Do not attempt to leave secured areas. Curfew is in effect. Any civilian found outside after curfew will be detained for public health safety. The message repeated, over and over, distorted by static. Marcia paused, looking up at me. Her expression said everything. There was no safe shelter, no place still secured, and if we stayed outside, the soldiers might not ask questions before shooting. Still, we had no choice. Staying here meant certain death. We hit the pavement running. The maintenance yard behind the annex led to a narrow alley choked with trash bins and abandoned parade equipment. Marcia and I picked through the debris, keeping low, moving from shadow to shadow. We saw a group of dancers huddled under a float tarp, 6 of them, trembling, clutching one another. One girl waved at us frantically, trying to mouth words we couldn't hear. Marcia stopped, halfway between fleeing and turning back. I grabbed her wrist, shook my head. The infected would smell them soon. Huddling in place wasn't survival, it was waiting for the end. We kept moving. A block away, near the old maintenance tunnel entrance, we found the first pile of bodies. Not all infected. Soldiers too. Bullet wounds, bite marks, torn uniforms. One of the soldiers lay face down, a rifle still clutched in his hands. I crouched, pried it free carefully, checking for ammo. Half a magazine. Better than nothing. Marcia found a knife strapped to another soldier's belt and took it without hesitation. We didn't look at the faces. Names didn't matter now, only survival. Beyond the tunnel entrance, the maintenance path ran beneath the stadium foundations, a cracked concrete trench, half flooded from the last rains. We slipped inside just as another wave of infected came pouring out of the main avenue, drawn by the gunfire and sirens. Down here, the darkness pressed close. The only light came from flickering emergency lamps strung along the walls at irregular intervals. It felt like walking inside a throat. Our footsteps echoed in the confined space, every splash and scrape too loud. Somewhere behind us, something let out a wet, rattling screech. Not human, not anymore. We picked up the pace. Ahead, the tunnel split, one branch leading deeper under the Sambadrome, the other angling toward the maintenance garages and emergency exits. I hesitated. The deeper tunnel promised better hiding, fewer infected, but the exit meant a chance at freedom. Marcia looked at me, waiting for a decision. Before I could speak, the emergency lights above the exit flickered, and then went out. Total darkness. From the blackness beyond, a new sound rolled toward us. Not running, not screaming, something heavier, something breathing. We froze. Both of us pressed against the cold tunnel wall. The breathing grew louder, heavy, ragged, as if dragging lungs too ruined to function properly. It wasn't human anymore, not completely. I shifted the rifle in my grip, finger hovering near the trigger but not committing. Shooting down here might bring worse. Marcia pulled the knife from her belt, blade trembling slightly in the dim glow of the last emergency lamp. We waited. In the distance, back toward the main avenue, came the rising howl of the infected. A tide of them, chasing something, or someone. Maybe the soldiers trying to retake the stadium. Maybe more dancers trying to flee. Either way, that path was closed to us now. I pointed silently toward the maintenance garage route. Marcia nodded. We slipped along the wall, feet sliding carefully over cracked concrete. The breathing followed, not quickly, not urgently, as if it already knew we had nowhere else to go. Ahead, a set of rusted steel grates blocked the tunnel, designed to stop flood debris, or desperate people. I spotted a service hatch halfway up the wall, half hidden, small, just big enough for one of us to squeeze through. Marcia spotted it too. She boosted herself up first, fingers scrabbling for a grip. I pushed from below, helping her jam her body through the narrow frame. She disappeared into the dark beyond. The breathing behind me hitched, sped up. I didn't wait. I hauled myself into the hatch, feeling the jagged metal tear at my arms. The rifle scraped through after me. Behind, something large slammed into the tunnel grating. The impact shuddered through the walls, a low metal groan vibrating against my bones. I didn't look back. The maintenance shaft was a maze. Narrow concrete corridors layered with dust and forgotten wiring. Occasional emergency lights cast sickly orange pools of glow, but most of it was pure darkness. We crouched low, moving as fast as we dared. Somewhere above us, the sounds of the parade had finally faltered. No more music, no more crowd noise. Only the low, constant thrum of distant fires and the scattered pops of gunfire far beyond the stadium perimeter. Marcia whispered, "This way." I followed. She found a service ladder leading up to a maintenance catwalk, half collapsed, cables dangling like torn muscle. We climbed carefully, one rung at a time. Up here, the world felt wider, but not safer. The infected moved faster than we ever expected. Some of them still stumbled, blind and twitching. Others sprinted in jerky, unnatural bursts. And the ones we heard now, the ones trailing us through the maintenance tunnels, were something worse, changed by the night, by the infection, by whatever had gone wrong in the first place. We reached a hatch near the ceiling, an old emergency exit bolted shut from the outside. I braced the rifle strap against my shoulder, wedged the barrel between the hatch and frame, and pushed with everything I had. The metal screamed, flexed, then gave way with a crack. Fresh night air hit us like a slap. Smoke, sweat, burning fuel. Marcia climbed through first. I followed. We tumbled into a side alley behind the maintenance garages. The city beyond wasn't Rio anymore. Not the city I knew. Storefronts smashed open, car alarms wailing endlessly, fires rising from rooftops like signal flares no one would answer, shadows darting through the smoke, some human, some not. The military truck with the loudspeaker rolled by 3 blocks ahead, repeating the same hollow orders. Civilians must shelter. Curfew is enforced. Any resistance will be met with force. We didn't even consider surrendering. Anyone still enforcing orders tonight wasn't offering safety. The maintenance garages loomed ahead, dark hulks behind chain-link fences. Marcia pointed. "There," she said. Inside the nearest garage, a row of vehicles waited, some intact, some abandoned mid-repair. Old ambulances, flatbed trucks, maintenance jeeps, if we could find keys, if the engines still worked. We scaled the fence, cutting our hands on the twisted wire. Inside, the garage was eerily silent. Tools scattered across the concrete floor, broken light fixtures hanging from the ceiling. A body slumped against a tire rack, face down, one hand still clutching a keyring. I moved first. The keyring was slick with old blood. I pulled it free, wiped it on my costume, tried to focus. Every second mattered. Marcia was already checking the vehicles, flipping visors, rifling glove compartments. The infected could smell us. I could feel it, though not on my skin, in the stillness, in the way the dark pressed closer every time we hesitated. The second jeep we tried rumbled to life on the third turn. Headlights off, engine coughing once, then settling into a low growl. Marcia swung into the passenger seat, rifle across her lap. We backed out slowly, tires crunching over broken glass. Outside the garage, the world had shifted again. A convoy of armored vehicles rumbled down the main avenue. Military, yes, but not local police. No insignias I recognized. Black uniforms, blank helmets, moving with mechanical precision. Behind them, a new kind of infected surged forward, faster, leaner, shrieking in concert. The soldiers fired controlled bursts into the crowd. Some of the infected went down. Some didn't stay down. It didn't feel like rescue. It felt like containment. We turned away, headed east toward the old city limits. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other on the rifle. Marcia kept her head low, scanning alleys, windows, rooftops. In the distance, the Christ the Redeemer statue loomed above the city, its floodlights casting a broken, flickering halo. Even from here, I could see cracks running down its stone arms. Rio was breaking, crumbling, dying, and we were trapped inside it. We didn't speak much as we drove. Every intersection was a gamble. Some were blocked by crashed cars, burning piles of debris, mobs of infected clawing at anything that moved. Others seemed clear, only to reveal hunting packs lying in wait. At one corner we saw a bus jackknifed across the street, its windows spiderwebbed with blood. Something moved inside, twitching, jerking. We didn't stop to look closer. At another, a barricade of furniture and scrap metal rose across the avenue, manned by civilians with baseball bats and improvised weapons. They shouted at us to stop, waving us toward their blockade. We drove around them without slowing. Trust was a currency no one could afford anymore. Hours blurred together. The city thinned around us. Skyscrapers giving way to residential neighborhoods, then industrial parks, then overgrown lots and abandoned factories. The infected thinned too. Not gone, just slower, weaker, as if something held them back. But new dangers replaced them. People. Desperate, ragged survivors who saw a working vehicle and smelled a way out. We avoided them when we could. When we couldn't, we didn't stop. By dawn, we reached the city's crumbling outskirts. The roads turned to broken asphalt and cracked cement. Jungle crept close on either side, swallowing old warehouses, chain-link fences, rusted-out trucks. We stopped once, just long enough to siphon gas from an overturned tanker and patch a slow leak in the radiator with duct tape and prayer. Marcia found a battered road map in the glove compartment. We traced a route with trembling fingers, east, away from the worst of the fires, toward the rural highways. But the highway east wasn't a highway anymore. It was a boneyard. We drove past wrecks stripped of anything useful. Buses burned to skeleton frames. Cars left with doors hanging open, sometimes with belongings still inside. Children's toys, backpacks, half-eaten meals turned to rot. No signs of organized evacuation. No sign anyone tried to lead people out in time. The infection had moved faster than orders could, faster than hope. Marcia folded the map into her lap, tracing invisible paths on her jeans with a fingertip. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Every mile we drove, fewer choices remained. Fuel wouldn't last forever. Food, even less. And always, from somewhere behind us, the sense of being followed. No sirens, no engines. Just a crawling inevitability carried on the wind. We passed a checkpoint that had been abandoned in a hurry. Makeshift concrete barriers crushed, razor wire tangled and torn apart. Blood sprayed across the road in wide, dark fans. No bodies left behind, only the aftermath. By mid-morning, the sun burned overhead, leaching color from everything. The engine started coughing again. The leak we patched wasn't holding. We'd bought hours, not days. We pulled into a service station barely standing, one pump still upright, sagging over a cracked island of concrete. No fuel left, of course. No power. Inside the attached mini-market, shattered glass and empty shelves greeted us. Looters had stripped it clean. I stepped carefully around the wreckage, rifle up. Near the back, I found a cooler wedged under a fallen beam. Inside, 3 bottles of water still sloshed when shaken. Warm, but clean. Marcia found a dented vending machine half buried in rubble. She pried the door open with the knife, digging out 2 smashed granola bars and a handful of hard candies. It wasn't a feast. It was survival. We sat behind the station's crumbling wall, sipping warm water and chewing stale sugar, staring out at the empty highway. No other vehicles passed. No helicopters overhead. Only the low crackle of burning fields somewhere beyond the trees. We pushed east again. Every kilometer the trees thickened, jungle swallowing the old roadways, vines tearing apart asphalt and guardrails. We kept the jeep moving until the engine finally gave out near a washed-out bridge. It wasn't dramatic. No explosion, no smoke. Just a tired, final cough and silence. We rolled to a stop under the spreading arms of a crooked ceiba tree. Beyond the bridge, a dirt road snaked away into the forest. We gathered what we could carry: water, the rifle, the knife, the candies, and left the jeep behind. Marcia tied a strip of fabric around the rifle barrel to mark it if we dropped it. Small preparations, rituals of survival. We moved into the jungle. The forest closed around us like a fist. Bird calls pierced the stillness. Insects hummed. The sun filtered down in broken shafts, painting the ground in moving patterns. It was easy to forget, for a moment, that the world was ending, that anything still hunted us. But we knew better. Every so often we spotted signs, branches broken too high for any normal animal, drag marks across the dirt, deep prints where bare feet had stumbled through the underbrush. The infected were adapting, maybe not thinking, but learning, following, waiting. By nightfall, we found an abandoned farmstead, half collapsed, the jungle clawing at the wooden walls. We circled twice, checked for movement, then slipped inside. A cracked well still offered water. A rusted rain barrel held a few liters more. Inside the house, dust coated everything. Family photos lay scattered on the floor, faces blurred by mildew and time. We didn't light a fire. Smoke would betray us. Instead, we sat in the darkness, backs against the wall, listening. The jungle around us never slept. Things moved out there. Things too big to be monkeys, too quiet to be deer. We took turns keeping watch. Neither of us slept much. Sometime before dawn, Marcia nudged me awake. She pointed through a crack in the boarded window. Far off across the fields, faint lights moved, columns of flickering orange and white. Vehicles, maybe, or handheld lamps, not infected, not survivors either. Soldiers, the ones in black helmets, containment teams. Marcia's mouth tightened into a thin line. She knew what that meant. They weren't here to help us. They were here to erase us. Burn what remained. Pretend this never happened. We had two choices. Stay here and wait for the flames, or run. We gathered our things in silence. Water, rifle, knife. The candies stayed behind. Weight mattered now more than comfort. We slipped out the back, keeping low, moving through the waist-high grass toward the tree line, toward deeper jungle, toward the unknown. The first fires started behind us minutes later, bright roaring pillars of destruction swallowing the farmstead, the fields, the empty road. The soldiers moved methodically, sweeping the land clean. No hesitation, no mercy. We didn't look back. We didn't stop. As the sun broke over the treetops, we crossed a shallow stream, muddy and slow, our clothes soaked and clinging. Beyond the stream, the land rose into tangled hills, thick with vines and roots. We climbed, hands bleeding, slipping, pulling each other up when footing failed. At the crest we turned, and for one moment saw the city we had left behind. Rio, or what was left of it. Smoke rising in black towers, the glint of broken glass catching the dawn, tiny flashes of gunfire, roiling clusters of movement along the roads. I couldn't look at it long. The city pulled at the eye, bright, broken, thrashing like an animal too big to die quietly. But every second we stood still was another second someone might spot us, or something. I tapped Marcia's shoulder. She nodded once. We slipped down the far side of the hill into thicker trees. The ground changed fast. No longer dirt and rock, but soft, wet loam that sucked at our shoes. Vines hung low enough to catch the rifle strap. Bugs the size of coins clung to every surface. The jungle wasn't just background noise now. It was alive, oppressive, breathing. We moved slow, crouched low, weaving between massive roots and hanging branches. Hours blurred together. Birdsong broke the air sometimes. Sharp, sudden. Every time it stopped, we froze too, counting breaths, listening. It wasn't only us out here. Sometimes, off to the sides, we caught glimpses. Movement between the trees. Figures that didn't move like animals, didn't stalk like predators, just drifted, dragging limbs, staring sightlessly through the green. The infected had come this far too. Maybe some broke off from the main groups. Maybe instinct drove them into the wild after the easy prey ran out. They moved quieter now. No shrieking, no sprinting, just endless patient wandering. Around midday we found the remnants of a camp. Tarps hung in tatters from the trees. Blackened stones marked an old fire pit, cold and scattered. Cans lay rusting in the mud. Torn backpacks. A child's sandal, half buried. We circled the clearing twice before approaching. No bodies, no blood. Whoever stayed here left in a hurry, or was taken without a fight. I scavenged what I could. A battered metal canteen, half a roll of duct tape, a small folding knife so rusted it barely locked open. Marcia found a half-sealed bag of rice deep under one of the collapsed tarps, damp, infested with ants. We took it anyway. Food was food. We stayed no longer than we had to. The jungle pressed in tighter with every hour. The sun overhead barely touched the ground now. Light came in thin beams, scattering against mist that hung between the trunks. It was easy to lose direction, even easier to lose time. We marked trees as we went, gouging lines into bark with the knife. Always keep track of where you came from. Always know the way back. Not that we had anywhere left to return to, but direction mattered. Direction was survival. Late afternoon brought rain. Not a soft drizzle. A wall of water pounding down so hard it blurred the world into shapes and noise. We took shelter under a tangle of fallen branches, pressing ourselves flat against the roots. The rain masked sound, made every motion harder to spot, a blessing and a curse. We huddled close, trying to stay awake, trying not to shiver too hard. Through the downpour, movement came. At first, just silhouettes, then more. Dozens. The infected moved through the rain like wraiths, silent, staggering, their heads tilted upward as if listening to something we couldn't hear. Some wore the remnants of parade costumes, feathers plastered to rotting skin, sequins clinging to torn flesh. A samba queen staggered past 10 meters away, her sash still draped across her ruined body. Another one dragged a broken drumstick, tapping it absently against her thigh. The rain muffled everything, even the hollow thumps of their footsteps. We didn't move, didn't breathe. Only when the last of them melted back into the forest did we risk crawling out. The ground was mud now, slick and sucking. The air stank of wet rot and something chemical, maybe from the burning fields, maybe from the bodies starting to bloat in the heat. We kept moving. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Mist rose from the forest floor, clinging to our legs. The trees loomed larger, their outlines twisting in the darkness. Our clothing hung soaked and heavy, our hands cramped from gripping the knife and rifle too long. Still, we moved. Stopping wasn't an option. Infected didn't need rest. Hunger drove them even when flesh rotted from their bones. We climbed another ridge by moonlight, fingers raw from grasping at vines and jagged stone. At the top, we finally saw it. Lights. Not the fires of Rio, not military searchlights, real lights, yellow, warm, scattered across a cluster of low structures half hidden in a valley basin. Maybe a village, maybe a farm. Marcia let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Hope was dangerous. It made you careless. But hope also kept your legs moving when everything else screamed to stop. We didn't celebrate. We didn't run. We moved down the ridge, slow and careful, using every bit of cover the jungle offered. The closer we got, the stranger the place seemed. The lights flickered but didn't waver. No signs of panic, no gunfire. No walls though, no real barricades, just houses ringed by crude fences of scrap wood and barbed wire. A figure moved between two houses, carrying a lantern. Human, walking steady, no limp, no wild motions, alive. We crouched at the edge of the tree line, watching. Minutes passed. More figures moved, quiet, measured, not rushing, not infected. A small boy carried a basket from one building to another. An old woman sat on a porch, rocking slowly. No screaming, no blood. It didn't make sense. Marcia looked at me, questions in her eyes. I didn't have answers. But we couldn't stay out here. Not with the infected roaming the woods, not with soldiers burning everything behind them. This village, whatever it was, might be our only chance, or our last mistake. We waited for full dark before approaching. No shouting greeted us. No alarms, only the soft flicker of lanterns and the steady creak of rocking chairs. As if the world beyond the trees had never ended. As if carnival had never turned into a killing floor. As if life here still clung stubbornly to some old rhythm, unbroken. I raised my hands when we crossed the outer fence. Marcia did the same. A man stepped from the shadows between two houses, middle-aged, weathered, a shotgun resting across his arms. He didn't point it at us, but he didn't lower it either. He studied us for a long time. Our torn clothes, mud-streaked faces, the rifle and knife we carried openly. Finally, he nodded once, wordless. Invitation or warning, I didn't know, didn't care. We stepped into the village, leaving the ruined world behind us for one more night. The village wasn't large, maybe 20 houses scattered around a cracked central square. More sheds and lean-tos tucked between trees at the edges. No cars, no loud generators, just oil lanterns and hand tools, battered water barrels, clotheslines strung between sagging porches. It smelled of wood smoke and wet earth. A few people glanced at us as we passed, faces lined by sun and age. No smiles, no shouts, just silent appraisals, measuring if we were threat or burden. We didn't speak. The man with the shotgun led us toward a low building near the center, a squat house with stone foundations and a roof patched with mismatched tiles. Inside, the air was warmer, heavy with the scent of damp stone and boiled cassava. A woman waited by a battered table, arms folded, hair pinned back in a tight knot, face shadowed by the lantern's glow. The man spoke first. His voice was low, deliberate, measured Portuguese. Strangers don't last here without rules. He pointed to the floor, to a faded red line painted across the boards. You cross that line without permission, you leave. Simple enough. The woman stepped closer, eyes sharp, voice softer. You bring sickness here, you leave. You steal, you leave. You fight, you leave. Another pause. If you run when the drums sound, you die outside the fence. She said it like it was weather, like it wasn't personal, just fact. Marcia nodded slowly. I followed. We had crossed worse lines tonight already. They gave us a corner of a communal building to sleep in. Little more than a roof, a raised wooden platform and woven mats. Others slept there too, old men with missing teeth. 2 young women curled together under a threadbare blanket, a boy no older than 6, hugging a cloth doll missing an arm. No one spoke to us, but they watched. Even as they slept, their bodies turned toward us, half listening. I didn't blame them. We were contamination, unknown, risk. In this new world, strangers could kill you just by breathing too close. Marcia sat beside me in the dark, legs pulled to her chest, chin resting on her knees. Neither of us slept. Outside, the jungle buzzed and clicked and whispered, and somewhere farther off, almost too faint to notice, the distant crack of rifle fire. The soldiers hadn't given up the hunt yet. Morning came grey and heavy. The villagers rose early, working without orders, repairing fences, reinforcing barriers with thorny branches, hauling water from a hidden well we hadn't seen the night before. Survival here wasn't accidental. It was maintained. Carefully, relentlessly. A man with a weathered face and a limp showed us how to patch fishing nets. No words, just gestures. Expectation. Marcia picked it up faster than I did. We worked until our hands blistered, tying knots, repairing ropes, stacking bundles of firewood. Later they brought food, a thin stew of roots and something chewy they didn't name. It tasted like nothing, but it was warm, and it filled the hollow space gnawing at my gut. Gratitude felt dangerous, like breathing too deeply in a minefield. By the second night, I thought maybe we could stay, at least long enough to heal, to plan, maybe find a real way east, away from the collapsing cities, away from the smoke and rot and death swallowing everything. Then the drum started. It began just after sunset, a slow, hollow beat rising from the far side of the village, past the outermost houses where the jungle thickened again. Boom, 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 steady, patient. The villagers froze in place. Those near the fires doused them in silence. Those near the fences grabbed crude spears and worn machetes. No one screamed, no one shouted. They had done this before. The man with the shotgun appeared from the darkness, motioning us back toward the communal house. No words, just urgency in his movements. We obeyed. Inside, the sleeping mats had been pulled into a tight circle around the cold hearth. Everyone huddled together, backs inward, weapons pointed towards the door. The drums grew louder. Boom, boom, boom. Always 3 beats. A pause, then 3 more. Marcia edged closer to me, hand brushing mine briefly. I didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. The air inside thickened, heavy with sweat and fear and something else, something older. The boy with the cloth doll whimpered once. His mother clamped a hand over his mouth. tears shining in her eyes. The first shrieks came an hour later, high, broken, echoing through the trees like splintered glass. I gripped the rifle tighter, every muscle wound tight. Outside, shapes flickered beyond the fence line, half-seen figures darting between trees, too fast, too wrong. The infected. But not just shambling, mindless ones. These moved differently. Slower at first, testing, then faster, as if sensing the weakness of the living behind the wood and barbed wire. Somewhere near the far corner, a spear clashed against something heavy. A grunt, a wet tearing sound. The fence shuddered. A woman outside screamed once, short and sharp, then silence. The drums never stopped. Boom, 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 marking time, marking the living, marking the dead. The siege lasted until dawn. We stayed huddled in the darkness, clutching weapons we barely knew how to use, listening, always listening, to the scrape of hands along wood, to the rattle of barbed wire torn and mended and torn again, to the low, crooning sounds the infected made as they pressed closer, closer, closer. Once, I saw one through the broken slats of the wall, eyes clouded white, mouth slack, skin peeling from its face in sheets. But it didn't lunge. It just leaned, pressing itself against the building, like it could smell the living inside, like it could taste hope leaking through the cracks. I squeezed the rifle until my knuckles ached, willing myself not to shoot. Noise brought more. Noise meant death. We endured, hour after hour, until the first grey light broke the tree line, and with it, the infected pulled back. Not in panic, not in confusion. They melted into the mist and the trees as if the night itself recalled them. The drums stopped. The villagers emerged slowly, counting the fence posts, patching the gaps, burying the dead without ceremony. 6 by sunrise, old men, young women, the mother who had silenced her son. No one wept openly, no one shouted or wailed. Grief was a luxury here. Marcia and I stood by the communal house, weapons hanging limp at our sides, eyes burning from smoke and sleeplessness. The shotgun man approached. He looked at us long and hard, then pointed east, beyond the trees, beyond the hills, beyond the world this village had carved for itself in the ruins. It was a message. Stay and bring more death, or leave, maybe find something better, maybe die alone. But the choice was ours, for now. We packed before the sun reached its peak. Water, food, weapons, nothing more. The villagers didn't watch us go. They turned back to their work, to the endless task of surviving one more night, one more siege, one more drumbeat closer to the end. We slipped into the jungle without goodbyes, just the rising heat, the rustle of leaves, the knowledge that no place was truly safe anymore, only less dangerous, only for a little while, only until the drums started again. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.